Welcome to the 11 Warriors show for Friday, November 15th, 2024. Jason Priestess, that's Chris Lauderback. Chris, are you jazzed for the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson bout tonight?
Fight night. Yeah, I haven't watched a fight in forever, and the state of boxing is so bad that it takes a gimmick like this to actually get me remotely interested. But hell yeah, I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be watching it with you, hopefully somewhere tonight, and in the Windy City.
Yeah, flying to Chicago this afternoon for the game. And, I'm not a big boxing guy or MMA guy, but like I'll tune in to watch a Gen X dude hopefully beat up a loudmouth youngster. Like I think that's like our whole entire generation's like, all right, we'll tune in for Gen X. But big one today, man. Ohio State's going to play football in an iconic baseball park this weekend, though fans have had it with noon kicks. Breaking down the four-team race to win the Big Ten. And Syracuse coach Fran Braun has some hygiene tips for us we'll get into a little later. Let's start with the Nooners, man. Big Ten announced this week that next week's anticipated clash with number 5 Indiana will be at noon in Ohio Stadium. Be the fourth of six. This week, I should say, will be the fourth of 6 straight noon kicks for OSU this season. Had 7 total. Started Marshall earlier in the season. We got Nebraska, Penn State, Purdue, Northwestern this weekend, Indiana, and then Michigan. Have to go all the way back to 1999 for the last time OSU played a 6-game run of Nooners. And it's weird, man, because fans are ticked, and rightfully so, man. I'm with them on this. Writers, love it because they're like, oh, I get my job done and get out of there. But fans are pretty mad. Where do you come down on this whole noon kick thing? And we know why Fox is doing it. They own that window. They're getting massive audiences. The NFL plays at 1 p.m. Those games aren't considered problematic.
Yeah. I mean, selfishly, I like it for the reason you said. If I've got something I've got to crank out afterward, if I'm going to write 5 things, if I can start on it earlier in the day and kind of drag it out and watch college football at the same time, it's fine, versus a game that ends at 11:30 p.m. or something and you're up till 2:30 or 3 in the morning. That's not necessarily ideal. So from that standpoint, selfishly, I like the Nooners, but I totally get why it doesn't work for fans. And honestly, my bigger thing is, Day, talked about it a little bit, but my thing is just more of to the impact, to the degree it doesn't impact Ohio State, I'm kind of neutral on it, I guess, in general. Now, if some recruits can't make it on time or that kind of thing, then my opinion starts to sway a little bit. But I do think, like you said, though, Fox has owned that slot. But I am getting kind of tired of like the Joel Klatz of the world talking almost as if Fox is enabling all this great viewership. You could put Ohio State on at 2 in the morning and you're going to get roughly the same ratings that if you put them on at noon. So I feel like it's a little bit disingenuous for, Klatt and others to kind of thump their chest like Fox is doing this great service. But I also at the same time understand why they want to put the Buckeyes on, in that slot, or just, have Ohio State on the Fox network, period.
That's a great point. I mean, they do. I mean, Klatt almost talks down to fans as like, we're making, and
yeah.
I understand part of it because like the Big Ten has a massive TV deal with a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that money is because of things like Big Noon, but you got a kid on the West Coast you want to bring him in for an official visit. That's almost impossible to make, unless like we get into a world, and who knows, maybe it could be this way at some point where private jets are going out there to get kids for official visits. I mean, things are trending that way in general. So maybe we do get there, but Day had a really, I thought, funny quote earlier in the week when he was asked about it. And he was like, listen, man, I got to deal with a lot of fan backlash for things other than the times of games. So I'm going to leave that for other people to deal with. We went on to say, wherever they tell us to play, we're going to play. It doesn't matter where it is. Could be on the baseball field, could be 11 a.m., could be at night. We're going to put the football down and go play. Thought he handled that pretty well, but he's like, I'm hearing all kinds of other stuff, so I'm not going to.
That's way down on the list, like that he has no control over. It's one thing when when fans and writers are bitching about or being negative about the state of the offensive line or something. But yeah, when the game kicks off, it's not like he has a say in that. It will be interesting to see over time, though. Like I think Ohio State the Big Ten and the SEC kind of control college football right now. Well, Ohio State kind of controls the Big Ten as far as being the the loudest voice in the room kind of thing. And I do wonder at some point if Bjork and others say, hey guys, we're willing to do our part here, but we can't play 6-7 noon games in a season, to the extent maybe it does start compromising being able to bring kids in or being able to bring them in a normal way versus, like you said, sending going over and above to do that just because the game's at noon. Because again, I hear what Klatt's saying, but I don't want you put Ohio State on at 3:30 this week or 8 p.m. this week. They're still going to basically do the same viewership because it's Ohio State.
Absolutely. In the game this weekend, tomorrow is actually 11 local time, 11 a.m., but noon back home for all intents and purposes. The Fox does not change the branding of the show because it's 11 local. It's still big noon and all that stuff. Carnell Tate returns to Chicago, his hometown, this weekend. Played there before going to IMG Academy, played for Marist High in Chicagoland, a little bit south of Midway, 20 miles or so southwest of the city. Tate had some cool things to say, and Day had something even better to say, I thought. Tate said, quote, "It's a blessing going back to Chicago. I haven't played there since my freshman year of high school, so I'm very excited to go play in front of a lot of my friends and family." And that's got to be huge. I mean, it's a young man that lost his mother tragically in July of 2023 when she was shot outside, essentially basically a drive-by in Chicago, which is unfortunate, but all too common in some areas of that city. And Day was asked about it, Carnell returning home. He said, quote, "I just can't say enough about Carnell Tate. I'm not going to get into it right now, but I just have so much respect for who he is as a person, what he's been through, and the fact that he's going back to Chicago. I want to win this game personally for him, and I know the team respects the fact that he's going home, and it means a lot to him. He's not a guy who speaks a lot or tries to bring a lot of attention to himself. He's a team player. I know the team loves who he is. I know Buckeye Nation appreciates him." I just thought that was a really neat, nice quote. We were discussing it in 11 Warriors Slack yesterday, and it was like, would Brian Kelly ever say anything like that? Not in a million years, right?
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, probably wouldn't.
Kelly would throw him under the bus, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But to Day, to the whole point of Day being a much more people focused coach, certainly than Urban, certainly probably than a lot of coaches. I really appreciated that comment from him.
Yeah, and I was going to say the same thing. You just think about his his mental health focus and all those kinds of things. It was I mean that is not a any coach would go say that potentially. Brian Kelly wouldn't. A lot of coaches would say something, but to the degree they feel it or feel like they know that kid or whatever, those results may vary. But I do think Day is dialed in with these guys, and and for Tate, I mean, this is a guy that you factor all this stuff in. He could be a diva type receiver. He could be, have a chip on it. It could be a lot of things going on that could almost manifest themselves in different ways. This is a dude that hasn't had as many touches maybe as he thought he might have, especially before Jeremiah Smith was in the fold. And have you heard him complain about anything? All I've seen the dude do is downfield block, even when he's not catching balls, and do his job. And he's actually been really good over the last 3 games. I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but credit to that kid when you just think about, man, he had to do some growing up in a hurry. And it seems by all accounts, he's done that and is a hell of a teammate.
Yeah, and of course, Ryan Day walked a little bit of similar tragedy for himself, losing his father at a young age. So he knows what that's like, and some people don't, but give him credit, he does, and had a great comment on it. Sticking with the wideouts, we got to talk about Jeremiah again, man. Like, we talked about him all summer. We talked about him before he got here. And I think, I want to pat each other on the back a little bit because I think we were both pretty bullish on the guy. We're like, this is going to be like a Claret type or a Katzenmoyer type year where he just plays and he gets a lot of good playing time and he makes a lot of plays. And he sure as hell has, man. He broke Chris Carter's pretty much all of his records at this point over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, 8 and 9 games respectively broke all those records.
Yes, Carter, he's got 45 receptions to Carter's 41, which is the new freshman mark. 765 and yards to Carter's 658, and then 9 touchdowns to Carter's 8. Per game, 5 for 85 and 1 touchdown with all the weapons this team has. Just been really spectacular, and can't really say enough about what he's been to this team.
What's amazing to me, beyond the fact he's obviously really, really good, is the consistency. You said 5 for 85 and a touchdown is what he's averaging. If you go look at his game log on like ESPN.com or whatever, that's basically almost what he does every week, right? Like, I mean, his average basic hardly ever changes. I track it throughout the year, and I'm like, man, this dude just every week is a robot. And we called it last week. I mean, with him not getting in the end zone against Penn State, even though he led the team in receiving, I can't remember what it was, like 55 yards or something like that. Yeah. It was like, hey, they're going to look to get him involved a little bit more against Purdue, and they did exactly that. And I'm sure we'll see that continue to happen. But yeah, to me, I think as good as obviously just physically gifted as he is, I hadn't really thought about it too much until I was looking this week, but he's just been a model of consistency. He's found the end zone every week except one, and his, catches and yards per game are very, very close in every single game.
Yeah, and to his credit, with the consistency, like a lot of receivers will pop off a game or two and then like
You're right.
disappear for a week or two. But every week he's showing up on pace for 60 for 1,020 and 12 touchdowns over a 12-game regular season. So that's good information to compare to Carter because that's about what he played. But he's going to get a few more games in 12. So would not be surprised at all to see him around 14.
Yeah.
Depending on how far they go, 1,500 for a freshman. That's insane. That's a
School
record.
record's like 1,600 and change. And yeah, if they play that full possibility of games, yeah, he could very well threaten that.
CFP rankings out this week. Ohio State still locked into that number 2 spot behind Oregon. Big Ten getting a lot of love overall, man. You got Oregon at 1, Ohio State at 2, Penn State at 4, Indiana at 5, and you get the releases from the Big Ten Conference, and they're like, "Oh, this is the first time we've had 4, Big Ten teams ranked in the top 5," and that's a cool step. But let's be real. They added Oregon, so that kind of pads that a little bit. But still, man, great to see the conference playing well. You kind of look down this list, and got Texas at 3, Penn State again at 4, Indiana 5, BYU 6. Tennessee 7, Notre Dame, Miami, Bama, Ole Miss, and Boise rounding out the 12. And looking at those first round matchups, man, Boise at Ohio State, which would be really fun. And again, like every Buckeye fan that's a real fan is kind of has that marked in pencil because they're like, nope, that's Oregon. Actually, we're gonna be the one, and that's that we're coming back for what's rightfully ours. Notre Dame at Tennessee. Be really fun. Rocky Top in December. Ole Miss at Penn State. You think Ole Miss is going to want to play in Penn State in December?
Yeah, they want to keep winning.
Not a chance. Alabama at Indiana. The Crimson Tide in Bloomington for a game that matters in December.
Mind blowing on like 10 different levels.
Oh, it's insane. Insane.
Bloomington hosting a playoff game, the top of that list. But yeah, Alabama going all the way north to play a game of consequence would be something too.
A lot of fun. There's some SEC angst out there. Again, they have Texas at 3, Tennessee at 7, Bama at 10, Ole Miss at 11. No Georgia in the playoff field as of today. Some things can change. There's a lot of ball to be played. But I don't think I would have believed anyone if they told me in August, hey, mid-November, right, Georgia's not even going to be in the field. I'd be like, get out of here. Just stop lying. Like, no way, without all that talent, all that skill. But that's what we're looking at.
And they've been their own worst enemy, really. I mean, tons of interceptions, untimely, defense. I heard Feinbaum just, which he's going to do as an SEC honk, but, was just basically saying Georgia's, should be where Indiana is, basically, which is, pretty interesting on its face. But yeah, I would have never guessed at any point in any ranking this year that Georgia would not be in the field. Still a lot of football to be played, but yeah, a lot of folks are cranky that the SEC is not better represented in the current slate of rankings.
Yeah, I mean, and let's be real too. Like ESPN has a vested interest in seeing the SEC do well with the contract with the league, and I mean that doesn't really happen in any other sport. You don't say, oh well, the ESPN likes the American League better than the National League in baseball. Right. It just you don't see that. So something to keep an eye on. They're already writing a lot of words this week about how 9 of the top 17 teams in SP Plus or SEC.
Heather Dinich, like 3-loss SEC team could very well be, be in the hunt kind of,
insane.
Like it's, I guess we'll see, but I don't know. At the same token, I do feel like you could make an argument, like even right now, Penn State versus Georgia on a neutral field, who you taking? I mean, that feels like a toss up. It doesn't feel like 7 spots ranking difference to me.
Well, let's go back to that game. You got Ole Miss at Penn State. Who do you got there? What's the line and who do you
Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss, even at Penn State, would probably be favored by a field goal or so.
In December?
On the road. Do you think Penn State's offense can score more than an 80-degree temperature? I'm not sure they can score more than 20, and I think Ole Miss can do more than that, even in the cold.
Be a fun one to watch. Speaking of watching, we got one to watch tomorrow. The 4-5 Northwestern Wildcats meet number 2 Ohio State at Wrigley Field. It's homecoming week for Northwestern. Like, I
didn't realize that.
Aren't you supposed to pick like games you're supposed to win for homecoming?
Yeah, or actually host, but weird scenario.
I get the host thing. They're in a tough spot there, but like at least who's on the schedule? Purdue? You play Purdue? Well, they were at Purdue. Yeah. We can't do that one. Like, is there anyone else that was a better candidate than Ohio State? I don't know. I guess one way of looking at it is, hey, you draw fans back home to see a really good team play.
Northwestern alums are not coming back necessarily expecting to see Northwestern win. I mean, realistically.
Yeah.
No matter who it is, right? 500 in a good year.
long odds tomorrow. Again, the game's at Wrigley, man. First game at Wrigley for Ohio State. But the Bucks have played 20 games in baseball stadiums throughout the years, and most of these are probably mixed use football / baseball, which was the rage in the 80s and 90s. But 19-1 in baseball stadiums. Lone loss was to Purdue in 1943. 11 times they played at the Hubert Humphrey Metrodome. They played the Gophers up there back in the day. That kind of ran out in 2005. Actually played Northwestern at Cleveland Municipal Stadium when that stadium was a baseball / football stadium, and won 34-3 in 1991. Incidentally, that was another game that was a Northwestern home game. And Ohio State got to play them at Cleveland Municipal Stadium. So I don't know what they're doing in Northwestern with their home game strategy. 2 games at Jack Murphy Stadium and bowl games out there in San Diego. 2 games at the Polo Grounds in New York City. I thought that was wild because I knew they played some. I was like, is there any old park like Ebbets or something fun? Mm-hmm. Sure enough, Polo Grounds in New York. They played Columbia in 1926 and NYU in 1938 at the Polo Grounds. Day said OSU will do a walkthrough on Friday, which is really rare for the team to do that because they've seen most of the stadiums they play at, but this one's unique, and you've seen the pictures online. What are your thoughts on the configuration?
Yeah, I think getting the team in there makes sense. Give them a little feel for what's going on, sight lines, and where it's, a little dangerous to be, running out of bounds and those kinds of things. I mean, honestly, even play calling wise, it'd be interesting, but I think, if you throw it toward the third base dugout where, I feel like there's a wall like right there. And then obviously out in right field's a problem at the back of the end zone. But those are things you have to be, I think, at least cognizant of, aware of, right? When you're calling plays, if you get deep into the red, if you get into the red zone. So yeah, it will be interesting, but I do think it's smart that Day gets the team there. I think even at halftime, they said they go into the bullpen, which I know is like covered. It may be inside, whatever, but it's just some different scenarios. I think walking through that and give everybody a flavor of what they would expect, not even just field dimensions, but what you're going to do differently as far as halftime and those things. It makes sense. And I think knowing that it's a cool venue like this, giving those guys a chance to, kind of check it out when it's not game day, especially because the game's at 11 o'clock in the morning. If it was a night game or something, you could get them there Saturday morning and accomplish that stuff. But considering the timing of the game, I think getting there Friday, and doing a walkthrough there makes a ton of sense.
Wrigley is such a special place for fans. I've not seen a football game there. I've seen some on TV. For those watching at home or going, the home sideline is basically first base. The away sideline is left center field, kind of like is kind of how it's set up. Yeah. One end zone is the third base dugout, and then the other end zone is right field. And I did see, I guess in years past, they had the uprights attached to the ivy wall. And this year they've actually got it like standing on its own. So that's good to see. I mean, they're making progress there. But if you're a fan and heading to the game, it's a cool place to see a game, any game. And if you like to have a little fun before kickoff, hard pressed to find another stadium on earth with more bars within walking distance than Wrigley Field.
Those 9 a.m. beers.
There will be people drunk by 9:30, 9 a.m. Absolutely. So it won't be me. Hopefully it won't be anyone in our party, but a little worried, man. We're going with some guys that like to have fun and like
a little worried.
That 11 a.m. kick on Saturday. I think one of our buddies said he was going to be a shell of himself walking into the Wrigley Field that next day. So Chicago's got some fun things to do. There are 4 a.m. bars, and this friend of ours, he's the type to hit a 4 a.m. bar, get home at 5, and then be tailgating at 9. He can do it. If anyone can do it, he could do it. So line is 28.5, opened at 30.5. So it's come down a little bit. Bucks still heavily favored. Weather's going to be great again, 51 degrees or so, 52 in that afternoon slot. 0 chance of rain. I'm going to knock on wood. We've been so lucky with rain for a long time. Yeah. But everything's lining up. It's going to be a fun game. And I don't know if I'd want to go see like a CFP semifinal game at Wrigley. But for an otherwise boring game like this, like,
It gives us some spice. It gives you a reason to pay a little. I mean, we're always going to pay attention to the game, like you said, but I think, I'm looking forward to it. I've seen baseball there a few times. I've seen concerts there a couple times. I'd be able to see a football game there too will be cool. And just like you said, it's a fun experience. Maybe beforehand it won't be, as raucous with the 11 a.m., kick tomorrow, but, afterwards spilling out of there and, there's bars and whatnot everywhere. I think, and Buckeye, I mean, what's a crowd going to be? 85% Ohio State fans, probably something in that neighborhood. So it'll basically be a huge. It'll basically feel like a home game, but with actually a bunch of bars right outside the stadium. So I'm looking forward to it.
Coached by David Braun, the Wildcats are 12-10 in his second season there. He was hired away from North Dakota State to be the defensive coordinator for the Wildcats by Pat Fitzgerald in 2023. Later that summer, Fitz was fired because of a hazing scandal. He put together a win to snap Northwestern's 14-game road losing streak, won at Wisconsin later that year. They named a permanent head coach after that, and he won, the final 5 games of his first season to finish 8-5. That includes a bowl victory in there. Best record for a first-year Northwestern head coach since 1903. That's kind of nuts that 8-5 does that, but that's the story of Northwestern. Braun played DL for D2 Winona State in Wisconsin. He's 39 years old. I don't think the average fan could pick him out of the lineup, the average Big Ten fan. Like Northwestern fans could, but if I put like 10 dudes in a lineup and said, which one's David Braun, I think the hit rate would be like 8% amongst Ohio State fans.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm an above average Big Ten fan, and I don't think I could pick him out of the lineup.
His Wikipedia page doesn't even have a photo. It's the smallest Wikipedia page
characters.
I've ever seen for a
like
coach of any big time coach. It's like 2 paragraphs, no photo.
Yeah.
So, come on, nerds. You guys got to up your Wikipedia game and build your dude's page out. Bucks are 65-14-1 in the series. They've won 10 straight. Last meeting was 2022. Remember that windy game up in Evanston? Well, CJ had to actually run a little bit, and Bucks got out of there 21-7. Wind gusts from 30 to 55 miles per hour that day. It was a brutal one. Last Northwestern win came in 2004, also in Evanston. They won 33-27. Justin Zwick hit Santonio Holmes with 2:29 to play to tie it before Northwestern went on to win in overtime. You may remember Antonio Pittman going for 32 yards on 11 carries in that game. Really,
he wasn't
really
even the
tough.
starter.
If you look at the history, like that's the only win they have in like 50 years against Ohio State.
Yeah, unexpected for sure. Terrible offense that year, though. That's the year I feel like we always refer back to when you talk about Ohio State's run game, and it's like, oh, it's struggling a little bit, whatever. But historically, you're like, well, you go back to 2004, Ohio State averaged 4.1 yards a carry for an entire year. I think Lydell Ross was the leading rusher. Ohio State averaged 4. He averaged 4.1. I think Pittman was a little over 5, but he was he was basically the second and a half string running back until a little bit later in the year. It was all Lydell all the time early on.
Tough year to remember. Northwestern lost a double overtime game to Duke in week 2, 26-20. And then they beat Eastern Illinois and Maryland, winning 2 of their next 6. But losses to Indiana. Indiana pummeled them 41-24. Wisconsin beat them down. Iowa put 40 on them, holding them to 14. Not a great team. They won last week in overtime at Purdue, 26. Or I should say, last game was 2 weeks ago. They had a bye last week, but 26-20 in OT at Purdue. My dude Ryan Walters, the Purdue coach. Did you see that overtime at all?
No, I don't think
he had the ball first, and he went for it on 4th down instead of like trying to kick a field goal. The Northwestern was like, all right, thanks. So it was at home. I admire the balls from Ryan Walters, but that's why Purdue has got 1 win this season. Bit of a mess, man. Bit of a mess for sure. Speaking of messes, man, their quarterback situation is a little bit of a mess. They got redshirt sophomore Jack Lausch. He started the last 6 games. He leads the Big Ten in rushing among quarterbacks. Got 218 yards on the ground. A little shifty back there. But he's got 1 passing touchdown his last 4 starts. And that's something you try to avoid if you can. 8 for 27 against Washington. He went 9 for 24 against Wisconsin. But the last game against Purdue, he was 23 of 35 for 250. And that's a narrative that is out there with Northwestern fans. He struggles versus good defenses. Against the Big Ten's bottom 5 defenses, he's 227 a game. But against the other Big Ten programs he's met, he's 110 yards a game. So a little bit of night and day out of this guy. They have Mike Wright, who was a Mississippi State transfer, also played at Vandy. Started the first 2 games, struggled, so Braun made the switch to Lausch. And then the Purdue game and in another game this year, senior Ryan Halinsky will come out and we'll see spot action. Iowa and Purdue he did this season. It's hilarious. He was 2 of 4 against Purdue for 52 yards and a pick. And if you watch that game, they almost have like a mindset where, all right, Lausch is going to kind of run the ball a little bit and kind of throw here and there. And then Halinsky thinks he's like the slinger when he comes in. So he just like takes a 5-step drop and just guns it downfield. And like, that's what we'll see. So keep an eye on him. I don't think it's going to be much of a struggle for the Ohio State defense. Leading rusher Cam Porter has top 75 yards just twice this year in games, 4.0 a carry. He got 3.9 a carry last year, so I guess that's a slight improvement. Their leading receiver, AJ
I
Hennings.
can't tell if you're trying to be funny or not. It's just,
I mean, some of it's unintentionally funny, right? Like a leading receiver,
like
AJ
it's an
Hennings.
improvement over last year. Up
Oh yeah, 3.9 to 4.0, man. He can go in for his annual review and be like, "Look, man, I brought it up a whole tenth of a yard."
Arrow's going up. Yeah.
Leading receiver AJ Hennings, a senior, he's 5'10", so that'll be fun. 40 for 426 and 3 touchdowns. Season high of 117 against Eastern Illinois. He's got 6 combined catches in the last 3 games, though. So, this is just like the story of Northwestern's offense, right?
It sounds brutal. I mean, just the rundown here. I think, you roll that up into throw that all into a stew and you get 288 yards a game, which is last in the Big Ten and 131st in FBS. What are there, 133, 135 schools? So,
you're in the 130s, man. That's like usually like Bowling Green territory or Kent State.
As part of building the show sheet each week, Jason and I kind of put a little grid together in case we want to refer to some numbers, and it's like, what they are in their main metrics, and then, where that ranks, and literally scoring, rushing, passing, total offense, third down, red zone. They're 116th or worse in every one of those metrics offensively that I rattled off. Just brutal.
That's tough, man. I'm looking at that right now. Yeah.
I mean, they do nothing well. 116th is their best rating out of 130 whatever FBS schools, and that's in rushing, 112 a game, and in red zone scoring, 116. I mean, just awful.
128th in third downs, man. Don't leave them hanging. So what do you expect out of the Ohio State defense? Are we going to see some similar stuff that we saw from Purdue where you're like, hey, let's not play anybody that's dinged up. Let's play around with a 3-man front and experiment and maybe try some new things? Or do you think, hey, let's get back to bread and butter?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll be a little bit of all that, right? I do think it'd probably be, show a little bit more 3-3-5, some jack, that kind. I mean, at this point, you're just putting some stuff on film for an Indiana or somebody to at least prepare for, right? So I think you'll see some of that, but that's not really, that won't be done to try to affect Northwestern. That will be done to say, hey, Indiana, Michigan, whoever, here's another, wrinkle or whatever that you've got to prepare for. But yeah, otherwise I think they'll probably play it pretty straight up, maybe, crowd the line a little bit to make them throw, get up, and then you can just sit back in base and put in some backups. But I don't think they're going to overthink it too much, but I would imagine if you showed 3-3-5 last week in a, dog turd game, I think you may do it again, just to, again, make those other teams feel like, oh yeah, this is something we at least need to spend a period of practice on.
Roll Jack Sawyer out at cornerback. Give the other guys some, Indiana, Michigan, like you said, some looks to
deep
think
safety,
about. Putting you on the spot. Do they score more or less than 5 points, Northwestern?
I think I gave him 9 because I just think there's going to be a ton. I think, Day loves to keep the starters in way too long, in my opinion, but he's been a little better about it this year with the long season and whatnot. But I think with just knowing what's coming up down the stretch here and whatever, there's not going to be, I mean, if you can shut out a team, you're going to shut out a team. But I don't know. I expect Ohio State's offense to put up points a little bit faster this week. And then therefore, maybe you pull the trigger on working reserves a little sooner. So I think I turned in 38-9 or something like that, because I do think the backups will be in pretty quickly as you think about, man, just win this one and move on.
I'm at, I want to say 44-6.
44-6.
Yeah, same neighborhood. I do think, though, this defense is special, and I wouldn't be surprised.
They may not be able to help it even with backups, to your point, right?
Yeah, exactly. And as good as they are, crazy things do happen. When Ohio State has the ball, Northwestern, give them some love here. They actually have a decent run defense, giving up 108 per game, 16th in the country, 3.4 yards per carry. That's 22nd. I mean, the head coach is a defensive lineman, so you probably expect them to be stout against the run. Bucks have, basically back-to-back weeks of running the ball effectively after they retooled the line after Nebraska. Really interesting to see how they attack the Northwestern run D.
Yeah. I think, Chip has talked a lot, even lately, about taking what the defense gives you kind of things. They keep asking about, just different misdirection, a lot of the unique and, creative things that he's done. And again, I think it's going to be a mix if you want to try to get some stuff on film. But yeah, to your point, I mean, I don't think this isn't last year or years past where if Day sees a tough run defense and he's not running it well early, well, then he's just going to run it 30 more times because he's got to prove that he can do it kind of thing. That's just not who they are anymore with Chip showing up. So not to say they won't be able to run on Northwestern, but I don't know that they'll feel like they necessarily need to try to to prove a point. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what he does there, but I don't know. I'm not expecting them to run for, try to run for 300 yards or anything crazy like that. But I do think that you said the weather, it's going to be dry. Well, I think we said like low 50s or something like that. But I think the winds are going to be able to gust up to like 20 or something like that. And I don't know, Wrigley, they always talked about being kind of windy in there, at least for baseball and whatnot. So I wonder, like you said, it's not going to be at Evanston a couple years ago when it was 50-mile-an-hour gusts. But I do wonder if wind will be, at least a moderate factor tomorrow.
Have to keep an eye on that for sure. The strength of their defense, linebacker, junior Mac Uline leads the team in tackles with 58. Senior Xander Mueller, been out since mid-October, is probably the best player on their entire roster. He's a dude, but likely a game-time decision. I know they want him back for this. We talked about the run versus the air attack. What are some things you want to see from Ohio State's passing game this week?
Yeah, a couple things. I think the first thing is that, you want to see what you can do for Carnell Tate being in Chicago. I think Day is going to try to get him. If they don't target him a bunch, they're at least going to try to target him when they get him in the red zone, see if they can't get him a touchdown. Mm-hmm. You heard Day talk about him. He feels something for all of his players, but obviously Tate's been through something a little different. So I would be really surprised if they don't try to get Tate involved. But at the same token, like Egbuka really hasn't done much over the last 3 games. It's not like I'm not sitting there worried about Egbuka, but by the same token, I just wonder at some point, knowing next week, things start ratcheting up and you really get into the stretch run, to what point will he, be a little bit more involved this week? But as far as what I want to see Carnell Tate have a day in Chicago in front of friends and family. I mean, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, Will Howard coming off Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week honors. 21 of 26, another game over 80% for him. Chip had a joke this week about how Will told him, like, you start these noon games, I throw for 80%, do what you want. Really effective, 263 pass touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. It gets Purdue, but like that's what you want to see because you watch some Georgia games. It's easy for good quarterbacks to throw interceptions against bad teams sometimes. So
no turnovers is big for Howard, right? Because even these games where he's played really well, it's typically it's 1 interception or a fumble or something crazy happens where you're like, ooh, bad Will just for a second.
Yeah,
but it pops up. So I think the consistency, if he can start a run and consistently making sure he doesn't turn it over, that will obviously be huge for Ohio State down the stretch here.
And Chip certainly doing a lot to put him in positions for success.
Absolutely.
With some of the Chip's calls, man, you're just like, wow. I've never even seen a counter that looked like that before. Where did you cook that up from? Every week we go through the alumni of note from a school, like skipping over sports stars because those are easy in the Big Ten. And if you look at, like, we've done this now for every game, and every school's got some cool people. But you open up the alumni list for Northwestern, you're like, holy shit. Like, they've got some dudes. Like Abe Lincoln's son went there. He's the Secretary of War, Ambassador of the UK. William Jennings Bryan, Secretary of State, gave the famous Cross of Gold speech. Charles Horace Mayo, just the dude that founded the Mayo Clinic, one of the top research hospitals in the United States. Former Supreme Court justices, prime ministers of Sweden, Turkey, Belgium, the current president of Ecuador is in Northwestern. I mean, just stuff you don't see at your average school. George R.R. Martin, the author of the Game of Thrones series. I don't think you're a Game of Thrones guy, are you?
Oh, yeah.
Are you? For some reason.
Yeah, maybe it's out of character. I'm not big on, I can't believe I like it because dragons and whatever. But yeah, there's enough gore and, everything else in there. I guess it ratchets it up for me.
Yeah, must be someone else I'm thinking of. Did you ever read any of the books?
No.
He will spend like 10 pages describing a feast at like one of the castles.
I have to read stuff that's true. Like, if I'm going to read, it's got to be about stuff that's
You're
true.
A nonfiction guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but give him credit. I mean, 10 pages about feast, like 4 pages about the buttons on someone's jacket. And you're like, dude, this book does not need to be 800 pages. We could have done it in 2. What are we doing, brother? He went there. A lot of stars, Warren Beatty, Edgar Bergen, Zach Braff, Stephen Colbert, Charlton Heston, Julia Louis-Dreyfus from Seinfeld and Veep. Some 2 at the bottom here at the list we got to talk about. Hugh Hefner and Jerry Springer, man. They've got all these like Supreme Court justices, and they're like, oh yeah, Hugh Hefner and Jerry Springer also went to Northwestern. Some good ones in there, man. Who's your favorite of that bunch?
Ooh, man, that's a hell of a list. I'm sad to admit it, but I watched a lot of Springer in my day. I have to go with Springer.
Jerry. These young kids don't know what it was like watching Springer back in the day when there was like 18 channels and that was on 4 times a day. Special mention, we do game posters every week at 11 Warriors, and the poster this week is so fun. You can see it right now. head to 11warriors.com/Ohio State football game posters to see all of the game posters through the years. And we've had so many good ones. Walt did such a good job. Sam is killing it now, but it's the old Bambino calling his shot, basically. And you got the catchers, a Northwestern guy, and you got the rooftops out there from back in the days, the 2 decks of, Wrigley Field. Really, really cool poster.
Yeah, Sam knocked that one out of the park. 1932 World Series. Still don't know if he called a shot or not, if he was pointing to the pitcher or the dugout or center field, but either way, he took 2 strikes on purpose and hit the third one anywhere from 440 to 490 feet, depending on who you believe.
If he did not call a shot, by the time he rounded third, he's like, I'm telling everyone I called my shot, right?
Right. Well, and part of that was this was like the 30s. I mean, like the people really cared about baseball, but yeah, there are definitely true stories about in that game, like fans like spitting on his wife and throwing vegetables and stuff at him out in right field. There was a huge rivalry there between those teams, and it was a little more venomous than what you would expect from a typical baseball game these days. So there was definitely reason for, maybe you would point, maybe you would do some of those things. It wasn't the cordial, where everybody loves everybody on each team, in baseball these days. It was much different then.
Where was the game?
It was in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was game 3 of the World Series. Yankees won the first 2, and then it was game 3 back at Wrigley. And it was a 2-run homer that Ruth hit, and the Yankees went on to win 7-5 in that game. So it was an important play for sure. The pitcher maintains that Ruth was not pointing at him because he would have brushed him back on the next pitch. But there's only a couple different videos out there of it, and none of them are an angle to see if he really was pointing at center field or the Cubs dugout or the pitcher. But it does look like the pitcher's back is turned at least one of those times when he's pointing. So I don't know if we'll ever know exactly what happened. Babe has kind of given conflicting accounts himself of whether or not he was pointing to the dugout or to the pitcher or to the center field stands, but he was a showman, so there was definitely a point where he would play it up.
When in doubt, go with a good story is what I say. Speaking of good stories, man,
but the poster, though, is super elite, right? Like you not to get back to where we started from, the poster is incredible. Sam just did an amazing job with it. I knew it was going to be something like that, and when he dropped it, or when it was dropped in Slack, I'm like, oh man, that's a home run.
Yeah, it's a frameable one for sure, and you can print these. You can get a PDF. You can take to FedEx or Staples and print it. Frame it. They look great. Speaking of good stories, man, 4-team race in the Big Ten right now with 2 and 3 to play, depending on who you got. Oregon and Indiana have 2 left. Ohio State and Penn State have 3 left. But Oregon and IU at 10-0, 7-0 in conference. And then basically a game and a half behind number 2 Penn State, number 2 Ohio State, number 4 Penn State, both 8-1, 5-1 conference. Then you got a whole bunch of teams with 3 losses. Pretty much what we've expected for about a month now. We saw Indiana starting to play well. New Penn State was good. New Ohio State and Oregon are obviously 2 very elite teams. Very different from the SEC, which seems to change, and there's panic like going to different fan bases down there every week. This has kind of been like a chalk battle to the end, and I cannot wait for these next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, and part of it is that I think these top teams are pretty good in the Big Ten, but it's also kind of a top heavy conference this year. Some pretty, like you said, some 3-loss teams in there, but their overall records are a little bit worse than that in some cases, and I just don't know if any of them are really all that good. I do wonder. So the top 4, you said Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State, Penn State, as far as standings. Who do you think the 3 best teams in the Big Ten are in order right now? Really, I want to know who you think is third. But
that's a tough question.
1, 2, 3. Who do you got?
I'm such a homer. I got Ohio State 1, Oregon 2, because there's in my heart of hearts, I think Ohio State beats him at home or neutral field. I absolutely believe that. And Oregon's a very good team, very good coach. Yeah. I'm not dumping on it, but I do think I give a slight edge to Ohio State. And I want to say Indiana is the 3rd best team, but I guess we'll find out next weekend when they come to the shoe because they haven't played anyone.
Right.
And you know what else is not talked about a lot too is you look at these 4 teams at the top. Only one of these teams plays the other 3.
Right.
And it's the one I think is the best team. So if they get out of here 2-1.
They will have proved it, to your point.
Yeah, they get out with 2-1 with a 1-point loss to number 1 on the road, then there's no doubt in my mind that's, we'll see what shakes out in Indianapolis. But can't wait. It's going to be just a bananas next few weeks. And think this is fun, check the SEC, because there's like about 8 teams that are still kind of hunting and lurking, and like Missouri's like, hey, don't forget about us. We only got 2 losses. Like, you guys suck, first of all. Like, but it's just wild. And there's all these scenarios where multiple teams can tie and have fun. I would love the funniest thing possibly, like a 6-team tie, and they've got to go to some arcane tiebreaker where they're like, all right, now we're going to out of conference records for the teams you played. And you're like, what's that even mean, man? Like, I would be so pissed off if my team got knocked out of the contention because they didn't play. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you get these super conferences like this with all these teams. You run that risk.
Speaking of risk, man, Connor Stallions just won't die. The guy's heard earlier in the year he was coaching. He was the DC and interim head coach for Mumford High School in Michigan. Dude finished 1-8. So what do you do with a guy that leads a team to 1-8? You hire him to join your staff for the playoffs. He's coaching with Belleville High School in the Michigan State playoffs, calling plays and helping with D and special teams. Importantly, calling plays for 5-star 2025 Michigan quarterback Bryce Underwood, who is an LSU commit, and there's been so much smoke. I think something came out yesterday that Michigan might have $10.5 million for this guy for 4 years if he flips from LSU. Like, I mean, if you're a Michigan fan and you're like, your NIL collector's like, hey, we need some money, and you're watching that quarterback, you're probably opening your checkbook and like, what can we do? But of course, next year is also revenue sharing, so a lot of that money can come from the school.
Yeah, well, that's all fine if they want to give him that money, if they can flip him, but they better figure out where they're going to get some receivers from out of the basement bin, because what quarterback wants to go there right now with the receivers that they have?
They're going to have like a tight end catch 2,000 yards one year.
Probably.
I like it because anything that, like, I don't like LSU, I don't like Michigan. Get these 2 idiots in a bidding war. Like, yeah, spend all your cap on these guys and
Right.
have fun. And then you got some D2 guys at OL or whatever. Belleville faces Detroit Central Catholic, the number 1 team in the state of Michigan tonight. We'll be in Chicago. We got the Paul and Tyson fight. We got whatever's going on in the city. Wouldn't mind keeping one eye on what's going on back in Michigan to see how O'Connor does against a giant. I don't know, man. I can't. I've got 20 minutes. It would take forever to talk about what I want to talk about. How the guy that breaks all the rules and goes 1-8 gets another chance. There's people that don't get a chance. It's like, come on.
And why is he getting a chance? Hoping there's some sort of inertia that, could pull this kid to Michigan through it somehow, some way. So yeah, I'm sure we'll be keeping an eye on Twitter while we're watching the fight. Well, hell, that fight's not going to start till pretty late tonight. So I would imagine that we'll know before that starts. But yeah. Go
Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota are all off this week. What's a game out there there's a couple of good ones for various reasons? Anyone you're looking at?
In the Big Ten, I mean, it doesn't feel like there's a ton, really a ton this week. To your point, I think always worth keeping an eye on Oregon for sure, and going to Wisconsin, physical team. Wisconsin's been a little bit better lately, so a 14-point spread, I think. But yeah, I think out of the Big Ten slate this weekend, that'd probably be one I'd most be interested in, just to see if Oregon can keep it going against a pretty physical Wisconsin team.
Yeah, last met in the 2020 Rose Bowl. That's 7:30 on NBC tomorrow. 3:30 on CBS. You got number 4 Penn State heading to Purdue. Penn State's 28.5-point favorites. Same spread. Ohio State's favored by over Northwestern. Purdue hasn't won a game since August and hasn't beaten an FBS team all season. But that line is so big. You were just talking about how Penn State has trouble scoring. Do they cover 28.5? Is Purdue that bad?
Purdue's pretty bad. This is one I would just stay away from. I don't necessarily like these big spreads, but if I had to bet on it, I would probably take Purdue in the points.
4 p.m. on Fox, Nebraska at USC. That's a culture clash, man. Those guys wearing bib overalls out on Wilshire Boulevard and Sunset. Like, I want to see that. 2 old school blue bloods, man, combined for 16 national titles. But here's the funny thing. If USC wins this game and they're favored by 8.5, both teams will be 5-5. They'll be a combined 10-10. USC's had the run this year in the Big Ten. Tough first season.
Yeah, you said old school blue bloods. That's right, because they used to be good a long time ago, and now it's I don't even know how you still classify them as blue bloods, honestly.
R.I.P. to John Robinson, the legendary USC coach who passed earlier in the week. I think him and Pete are the only 2 good coaches USC has had in my lifetime, man. Clay certainly wasn't it. Lincoln doesn't look like he's it. Like, they had some dudes back, when Garrett was the AD, and they were like just like amateur hour athletic department.
Yeah.
So do your thing. Was Ed O at USC, or did he get his first gig at LSU?
I don't remember.
I want to say Orgeron was there too, and probably
who was
flamed
the one
out.
Drinking in the locker room? Was that Sark?
Sark was drinking, having team beers on Tuesdays before practice. Lane had a disastrous run at USC. Some good stuff out there. Speaking of coaches, man, national news. Fran Braun, head coach of Syracuse, comes clean, so to speak. Here's what he had to say.
There's a process that I follow every week, win, lose, or draw. Only thing is, like, my wife, I can't sleep in the bed if we lose because I ain't going to get in the shower for that day. I'm just mad, and I just sit there. I just brush my teeth. That's what I have to do so y'all won't say my breath stink, but I'm just kind of locked in at certain things, certain ways. I think you gotta earn the right to do certain things. So, winners get washed.
Doesn't shower after he loses. You know what sucks about that? Like, he's got money. I bet his shower is amazing.
Right. Yeah, he probably has a really nice shower.
Doesn't shower after losing.
It's not like he's always on, I mean, I guess at Georgia he had a pretty good run as an assistant, right? But
probably clean a lot back there at Georgia on their natty run.
Yeah, it was easy to tout that back then. That might be a little tougher now. He might want to be a little quieter about that strategy.
This guy's like the idol of every teenage boy in America. They're like, yeah, we don't shower either unless we're forced to.
Syracuse, go Cuse.
Lost 37-31 to BC last week, so he didn't shower last week. Can't sleep in his bed with his wife if he loses because he's not. Is it because he lost or because he's not showered? So many follow-up questions I have. But said he did brush his teeth, so the press corps won't say his breath stinks.
I should have asked him if he mixes in a dude wipe at least. Like, man, I don't know. Grown man? That's rough.
I like Fran. I think he's a heck of a recruiter and coach. And obviously, I think Syracuse is 6-3 right now. Moving in the right direction. Kyle Mick is hot or cold for him, one or the other. I mean, we saw a few weeks ago he tossed 5 in the first half?
Something like that.
5 for the game.
How many
pick
sixes?
3 in the first half?
Yeah.
So
3 or 4 pick sixes.
He needs Kyle to step it up so he can shower. National games, anything out there catch your eye this week? There's a couple good ones. I mean, you got Tennessee, Georgia, which is massive for obvious reasons. Some other good ones too.
Yeah, Tennessee, Georgia is the game, but I don't know. I've been following BYU all year. I was stunned last week when they were only a 3-point favorite over Utah, and turned out they ended up coming back and winning the game in miraculous fashion. Got a little help from a penalty, but then after that, they made they drove down the field, and Utah's AD was crying about it afterwards. But
he got some fines.
Man, yeah, for sure.
You imagine how much would you be fined if you were an AD? Like, can you imagine like how you just walk up and take the mic and you talk to reporters like, I got something to say, man. We got robbed. Like, I would be saying that like every 2 weeks. I'd be
definitely need a cool down period before that. But that'll be one I'll keep an eye on too. Obviously, like you said, Tennessee at Georgia will be the game because that's if Georgia loses this one, I don't want to hear Heather Dinich or Feinbaum talking about 3-loss Georgia. That just needs to be put to bed. But yeah, BYU's been on this crazy run. I hate the way the playoff allows these them and Miami, they're going to be terrible conference champions compared to the Big Ten and SEC champions getting a bye and getting a top 4 seed, but that's a different discussion. But I don't know. Their story's kind of fun. I kind of been cheering for BYU a little bit, I guess, as this has gone on.
That line jumps out to me, man. It's 2.5 BYU. Kansas is 3-6. BYU's 9-0. Mm-hmm. I mean, Vegas knows something about this BYU team. Probably a little something about Kansas as well, because man, they're fresh off knocking off Iowa State 45-36. Iowa State was ranked. They nearly won the week before at K-State, lost by 2 there when K-State was ranked. They got 5 one-score losses this season. So they're 3-6, but they're, one of those really, not really, but somewhat dangerous 3-6 game teams. Yeah. That's a 10-15 game on ESPN. So some late night action on Saturday. 7:30 is the Tennessee Georgia game on ABC. Georgia favored by 9.5. And like you said, man, Georgia loses. They're at home, but they lose this game. Beck hasn't been great lately. They're 7-3, 5-3 in conference. And it's like, it gets really hard to make, a playoff argument for that team. And their fan base has got to be going totally nuts. I mean, you've had this dominant stretch, and now you're like, hey, we might not even make the first 12-teamer.
How about Kirby calling out the kid that was, happy on the field after the loss last week, but refuses to really call out his speeders that much?
Called the kid an idiot for celebrating with one of his buddies from Ole Miss that he went to high school with, just kind of hanging out. Called him an idiot. Kirby had to backtrack, had to come out and apologize. And the first thing that, I don't know if it was you or someone in the 11 Warriors Slack said when he called the kid an idiot was like, he's harder on this kid than he is the guys that are going 130 over, Country Hills. Like, what are we doing, Kirby? Another one to watch, noon, ESPN, number 20, Clemson at Pittsburgh. Clemson's favored by 11.5, and they need a win to keep their title hopes alive. Panthers suddenly struggling with 2 losses. I'll tune into. I mean, not going to be easy to tune in this one, obviously, because we'll be at Wrigley Field. But keep an eye on Dabo at all times and hope for the worst is something Ohio State fans have become very good at through the years. But the other 2 night games, be able to check those out, see what's going on for those.
Yeah, we'll be watching those for sure. Yeah, that's another good one for being in the Central Time Zone on Saturday for us.
Huge, man. That's a 9:15 kick for the Kansas game and BYU game, and 6:30 kick for the ABC primetime. Like, I lived in Chicago for a decade, and there's no better time zone than Central when it comes to, like, it's a perfect time zone. Like, West Coast could be fun too because it's got its benefits. I mean, you're watching Ohio State games at 9 a.m. 6 times this season, and those games are over at noon, and then you're like, oh, I'll cut the grass and run a million errands. But Central is just perfect, man. You're close enough to the East Coast where everything's happening, but you got that hour offset. Yeah,
I'm with you. I've not lived in Chicago, but I wouldn't hate Central Time, I don't think.
For sure. All right, folks, it's time for our favorite part of the show, What's Your Price? We dive into the things in life we could do for the right price. We're talking about the fun, harmless stuff that doesn't hurt anyone or break the law, like driving 10 miles an hour under the speed limit for an entire year or entering a professional slap contest. So what's your price to change your allegiance, ditch Ohio State, and become a Northwestern fan for the rest of your life?
Are we diehard? Like, are we gonna love Northwestern with the same?
We're starting a Northwestern site, or like 11 Supreme Court justices.
That's gonna be profitable.
Like 10 readers. It's a hard one. It's a hard one because they're not like some awful Sunbelt or MAC team, right? That just doesn't ever do anything. You're going to get a Rose Bowl maybe once every 15 years. I mean, there's stuff in there. But then, like in the 80s and 90s, they had like a 30 or 40 game losing streak. So, and right now this is they put Ohio State in 2 Big Ten championships in the last 6 years. But this version of them right now, 4-5, 2-4 in the conference.
In this Big Ten,
this is the standard issue. Northwestern.
Yeah, they have no future. You might get lightning in a bottle, like you said, once every 10, 15 years or so. But you think they're going to dump a bunch of money in NIL anytime soon for football? Like, I don't know that I see that. Even with the alumni list, it's probably pretty wealthy. I guess you never know. It only takes maybe one guy to help supplement that. But God, man, that's tough. Yeah,
you got to wear Under Armour stuff.
Yeah, their colors suck.
You got to wear purple. Like your coolest stuff is purple now. Like you're like, oh, I can't wait to wear that purple hoodie. I mean, there's a lot to go. I mean, flip side, like you said, you could have a network, a professional network that could help you in life, help you in business. But man, just going into every season, like, I hope we go 8-4.
Yeah, especially being are there diehard Northwestern fans?
Gotta be.
We can be the only ones in this scenario.
No, there'll be a few of us, man. We hang out. Tailgates are boring. It's just every home game, the other team takes over your stadium once they finish rebuilding Ryan Field. Like, they can't play a home game in the Big Ten without other teams.
At least it'll be a nice stadium, I guess. Yeah.
It's a great stadium, but like, you can't imagine just here we go again, man. There's 80% Michigan fans here.
Yeah, man.
Now, we're not young dudes, so it's not like we're doing.
Yeah, not asking us when we're 20, but yeah, it's still.
That means like they play in this
hope
weekend.
You got another 25 years,
You're at Wrigley this weekend. If you take this deal, if there's an amount. You're at Wrigley this weekend hoping Will Howard fumbles. You're like, fumble. I hate that dude. Because you're a Northwestern fan.
Yeah.
And you're definitely telling jokes to your boys about how nobody from Ohio State can read, and you're doing all that stuff too. And like, oh, they'll be working for us someday. Like, that's part of your trash talk repertoire.
I feel like I almost need to break this down into what it would be, because you're saying what's your price for the rest of your life. I think I need to figure out what's it worth to me for a year, and then just extrapolate that out based on how many
And you don't have
I got left.
You don't have like a B team in college where like you go nuts for another team, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like you're still holding on to something for Ohio State. It's just Northwestern from here on out.
Yeah, and that's hoops too, right? Like, you got to like it all the same. So, although.
I think good in field hockey.
We're past the Holtman era, so at least we've got that to look forward to.
Got to show. He's I think they're good in field. They got like a juggernaut in field hockey or something.
Oh, we're gonna go to the field hockey tailgates.
I mean,
then, huh?
You know how it is. We hype up synchronized swimming. We're gonna hype up field hockey.
But have you ever been to watch it?
No, I wouldn't even know the rules. I assume there's a goal you try to shoot it into. Like that's the extent of it, right? I mean, it's field, it's hockey.
Swimming?
There's got to be like shots and goals. I feel like I can confidently say that.
Yeah, no, I thought you were talking about the rules for synchronized swimming.
Oh, I don't. Yeah, and yeah, who knows? And that's artistic swimming now. They changed it.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Well, we know that much. Super fan
we're
already.
diehards. Yeah. So I mean, are you 6 figures, 7 figures?
Yeah,
8
well,
figures?
we saying, can we try to do it per year and then just pull that out? Like, what's it worth in a year, knowing that it's going to be that way forever? Help me size it. Like, is it a $50,000 a year that I need? Is it more than that?
It's a good strategy. I'm thinking lump sum though, just for me to get over it mentally.
Because it's a bigger number.
It's a pretty decent sized number, man. I'm not gonna lie.
Right.
Like,
well,
I mean,
that's good because
like,
you can pull it forward because you're saying, I switch allegiance, give me my money. It's tax free. We always have to say that since we're talking about big numbers. So yeah, it would need to be something where I could, I know that it could help my retirement, could help.
You still got the Yankees, man. I would be stuck with the Blue Jackets and Northwestern. Like, what's to get excited about in sports the rest of my life? I might as well stop watching sports.
Yeah, I probably would just be, pretty diehard with baseball anyway, but I'd probably have to go to the next degree.
But like, as part of this offer,
I'd adopt an NFL. I'd probably have to pick an NFL team and start.
Don't make it the Bears. So they're cursed all weekend in the fall, these fans up there, man. And like the rest of them are Illinois fans, and they're cursed too.
Man, would you do it for $1 million? Do you need more than $1 million?
I'm kind of thinking 2, man, is where I'm at. I'm not going to lie. And I know that's a lot of money, and people are like, that's insane. I'd do it for 50 or 100 or 200 or 500,000. But like, think about what it takes to say, I'm not even going to watch Ohio State this weekend because I'm not a fan anymore, but I've got to watch Northwestern Purdue at 11 a.m. That's a lot of money. I mean,
26-20 in overtime.
Dude, imagine like wasting
you
like
win. We won.
3 hours. What is it? Game right? 3 hours, 3.5 hours, 12 a year, 13 a year. That's 40 hours.
But if you're diehard, you got to read all week about.
Oh yeah, you are. Xander Miller will be healthy for Ohio State. I hope so, man. I hope
look at these press conferences and. Ooh, okay.
You're checking. You wake up each morning. Your closet's 20% purple. Under Armour everywhere. Click clack, click clack. You got Spurrier like hyping you up.
Yeah, it's $2 million. Okay, yeah,
$2 million.
$1 million is not enough. Yeah.
We say that, but again, if someone like dropped a suitcase off right now with $1 million, I'd be like, But still, I think this is something I mean, there's a lot of other things we've done this question on that I would do for cheaper than this.
Yeah.
Like, what was the Penn State cat roar in your house all day? I would way cheaper than this. Way cheaper than this.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to undercut, if only one of us could, get it, and we said, if you were at 2, I mean, I'd probably do 1.9.
1.9. I hear you, man. Would
you chop me down to 1.8? Like, would you?
That's the beauty of some of this is because like you think, oh, that's easy, and then you start thinking about some more, and you're like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, because part of the Phantom is not just Saturday. That's the payoff. Yeah. But it's all this other time that you've got. Imagine following Northwestern recruiting intently.
National Signing Day. You're like, we're 82nd.
Cool. Yeah, look at that.
we're 17th in the Big Ten.
Got this 2-star receiver.
Yeah, your best player is like, oh, he's a 2-star, but man, some services thought he's got a lot of upside. That's like you're telling yourself those stories. His quarterback got hurt. His quarterback.
Fine. Yeah.
He would have had a big year. His dude got hurt. I mean, the same shit I talk about.
Is Fitz like blacklisted forever? Could Fitz come back and save us?
I don't think Fitz can come back, especially to school like that.
Yeah.
SMU, he might be in play. Baylor, he definitely in play, but like not at Northwestern.
Killed a man. That's all right.
Yeah, come on down. He's learned his lesson.
He paid his debt.
Recruiting, hoops.
Hoops.
I mean, hoops is like more upside than football.
To make the tournament. Yeah, give me some boo booey.
I feel like there's more upside in hoops. But
I'd rather watch Northwestern basketball than Ohio State basketball last year.
I mean,
and the year before that.
And I mean, I'd rather watch Northwestern than Virginia basketball, even under like glory days under Bennett. Like it's more exciting to watch Northwestern.
Yeah.
All right, $2 million. You're 1.9.
I'm 1.9. Yeah.
I mean, if there's a rich donor out there that's listening, or anybody you want to send this video to them, we'll create the 11 Warriors for Northwestern. We just need $3.9 million. We'll do it though. It'll be a great site. A great site.
Purple everywhere.
It will.
Yep.
Purple overload. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I feel like we have fun. We're not doing the YouTube thing as well. We're not like saying, subscribe below and like
Yeah.
tell your friends. But yeah, tell your friends. Thanks, for joining us. And if you enjoyed it, please share with your friends that are fellow fans. We try to be smart, try not to be too angsty, try to be funny when we can. Hope you guys have enjoyed some of these what's your price questions. Wait till the off season gets here. That's going to get super raw. We try to keep them sports related right now, but there's going to be some crazy. I mean, there's some fun ones in the kicker. Forget anything?
Nope. I think we're good. I got to get on Ventra and get me a card so I can get around Chicago later today.
That's right. If you're going to the game this weekend, please just watch a YouTube video on how to pay for train fare. We've all been there walking out of Northwestern games at the L station near Ryan Field, and there's like just a log jam of Buckeye fans that you still know how to get on the train. So it's not hard. You just tap it. You can get a little app for your phone. You can add it to your Apple Wallet, and you can actually do it that way. Really easy to use. But we're gonna have a blast this weekend. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, likewise, man. Should be fun.
As always, take care of each other. Be good to each other. Go Bucks.